Welcome back to Mixing with Metal. My name is Jacob Roach, and today we're going to talk about amp sims. So amp sims are really a dime a dozen. There's a ton of them out there, and almost all the times they sound a lot better in the demo than they do in real life. And they're really not that cheap. I mean, sure, amplifiers are a lot more expensive, but dropping $200, maybe $300 on a plugin for disappointing results really isn't great. Still, amp sims are really important. For most of us, it's not feasible having a whole rack of amps around for different types of tones, much less like a cabinet full of pedals. There are some hardware alternatives like the Kemper and Axe Effects, but really, amp sims are a great way to get good tones for really cheap. I use amp sims all the time, whether it's just for tracking and reamping later, or even as a full tone sometimes. At least some of the plugins now sound really, really good, so in this video, I want to showcase 3 of my favorites. Although I really didn't plan it this way, it just so happens that the 3 plugins I'm going to look at are at different price points. So no matter if you're on a budget of $50 or a budget of $250, you can find an amp sim that works for you. The 3 plugins that we have on the docket are the PRS Archon 50, the Neural DSP Archetype Abasi, and the STL Tones Tonehub. I put together a little demo just showcasing all 3, so let's roll that and then we'll jump into Cubase and talk about it. And we're back. So I'm in the Cubase session here, and you can see it's pretty simple. I just have some programmed drums, some bass, and then 3 sets of guitars. This is my standard writing template, just what I throw things in whenever I'm working on new music or anything like that. So we have 3 different sounds here. And yeah, let's just start at the top. Let me make sure I don't mute myself either. I'll go ahead and solo this monitor thing so you can hear me. Yeah, so let's start with these. So these beginning tracks, the kind of fade up, I'm going to take off the automation so you can hear them. These have the Waves PRS Archon on them. And I'll just let you hear a little bit of it and then I'll talk about it. All right, so this is a really, really simple kind of amp sim, and it's really cheap. It's actually, I think it's about $40 or $50, and it comes with 3 amps, the Archon 50 being one of them. And it's kind of a one-trick pony. It sounds really, really good, but it's nothing special. It's just the amp. There are a few features I really like, though. Number 1, built-in tuner, always nice to have. But the big one is this auto input setting. So what you can do is gain stage is a big part when you use amp sims, because you have to think about how much level you're actually feeding this virtual amp. And the auto input, what it does, you press this little on switch, you play a little bit, either from 2.5 seconds up to 10 seconds, and it'll automatically adjust the input for you and kind of get you the correct sound, if you will. The only thing I really don't like about this amp is the cabinets, but thankfully there is a built-in cabinet loader. So these are some free Zilla cab impulse responses that I found online, and if I can find them again, I'll put them in the video description. But definitely use some other cab sims with this, or some other impulse responses with this amp sim, because the ones built in aren't that great. So just one more time, let me show you what's going on here. Like that's a great tone, and for $50, it's really really hard to go wrong. EQ wise, I just have this little notch and then a high pass, so don't worry about any of that. Moving on to an amp sim that's a little bit more robust. This is the Archetype Abasi, and this has no EQ, no anything. It is just this. This comes from Neural DSP. They have a range of signature amp sims as well as a few based off of popular amplifiers. I'm using the clean channel here, obviously, and I downloaded this plugin. I didn't quite know what I was doing. I just kind of got a tone that I liked and it just worked. So let's listen to that real quick and then we'll talk about it. It has that really, kind of shimmery, clean sound that if you listen to Animals as Leaders, it should sound pretty familiar. Out of the Neural DSP amps, this one might be my favorite just because it has a lot of stuff going on. So you have three models. You have this clean, a rhythm, and then kind of a lead tone. You have two input effects, an overdrive and a compressor. And then you have some post effects as well, a delay, and then this is a reverb. And most of the time with the Neural DSP stuff, you're kind of just getting one sound or kind of a range of sounds and not much else. The Abasi plugin comes with extra effects and everything, so it's a little bit more robust. This is supposed to be a clean section, but let me just kind of cycle through the other amps so you can hear how they sound. Guess I should do this one as well. And then I'm going to turn off actually this compressor leading in as well as these post effects. Again, just trying to give you a sense of how this sounds outside of just clean tones. So yeah, some pretty unique sounds, honestly. I think this is probably the furthest amp sim from just like, okay, this is a generic metal sound, which is a good thing, right? You don't want to just throw the same, generic high gain tone that everyone's putting on their records. And that's why I really gravitate towards this particular plugin quite a bit whenever you're just trying to look for a unique sound. The clean tones are absolutely amazing. The dirty tones require specific context, I'll say that, but they'll give you a sound that most other amp sims can't achieve. This one's a little bit more expensive. I believe the price is $140, so it's an investment for sure, but it comes with separate EQs for each of the different amp sims or each of the different amp models, full microphone placement with, a bunch of different models. You can load your custom impulse response in here as well. It sounds great, even if the context needs to be pretty specific for it. All right, moving on to the last set of guitars. This is Tonehub from STL Tones. And you can see I have Abasi loaded up here. I have Abasi loaded up, or I did, but I took it out of there. But anyway, so these Tonehub, if you don't know, is basically like a plug-in version of a Kemper. There are a few things I don't like about it, and I'll go over those in a minute. But first, let me just let you hear the tone as it is. So it sounds great. I honestly, out of the many, many amp sims I've used, this one sounds the most like a real, in this case, a 5150. They sound great. It's like a Kemper in the sense that they're taking an entire signal chain and kind of reducing it to a preset that you can load up in your DAW. the way it works in the case of Tonehub is that you buy the plugin and you get this core pack. Now, this has about, I believe it's 60 or somewhere over 60 presets in it, ranging from high gain to clean tones, more high gain than clean tones, but has a little bit of everything in there. And these aren't that great. I'm going to just load up one really quick here. Let's see. Okay, so we have a 6534. I guess that's the closest thing to what we were doing before. Yeah, so let's just load up this one and see how this sounds. It's fine, but it's certainly not as good as this. Yeah, it's a lot better. So it comes with the core pack, and then you can buy these preset bundles on top of it. I'm using the Brian Hood pack, and in this case, it's the 5150 with a Mesa flat top processed. So in this particular pack, there's a bunch of different, basically variations of the same tone, whereas something like this pack has some more unique sounds inside of it. So it's highly dependent on the pack you get. The packs are expensive. They're about $50 a piece on top of a $200 plugin. So minimum to even get started with this, because the core pack's really not that great. Minimum to get started with it, you're looking at probably $250. Still, it's a lot cheaper than like a proper Kemper. And the tones sound great. There are two things you should consider, though, if this is going to kind of be your main setup. The first is I can't find any way to model your own amps, and I don't know if there is a way to do it. You can save presets, and on the STL Tones website, they say, yeah, you can save presets, which is a little misleading. You can dial in a sound using this tracing amplifier with one of the presets from a pack, and you can save that, but you can't model your own amps. So that's number one. Number two, you can't turn off this cab simulation, which that is a big deal, especially when there are some fantastic impulse responses out there, and that can, really make or break a digital guitar tone. But there are some upsides as well. The first is that there are a bunch of stomp boxes built in. On the front end, you have a compressor and 3 types of overdrive. Obviously, the green overdrive is similar to a tube screamer, and that's what is being used on this preset. These other overdrives, I'm not sure what they're based off of. Going by the color, I would assume that this is the orange Boss overdrive, and then I have no idea what this is. Typically, though, I'm just using the tube screamer. You have an EQ on the back end, which is pretty common for most amp sims. And then in the effects loop, you have a reverb, a delay, chorus, flanger, phaser, and tremolo. So quite a few effects in there. And the effects certainly aren't bad. They're not great, but they're not bad either. Actually, let me just kind of dial in something on these clean guitars really quick here. I'll bypass Abasi and load it up. All right, so just a sec. I'll be right back after I've dialed in a tone. All right, so literally just probably a minute and a half. I'm using this Black Star Artisan preset, and then I just tweak the delay and reverb a little bit, and then this is the tone I'm getting out of the plugin. So that's pretty good. I mean, the delay and reverb sounds fantastic, and of course the amp sounds great. So I really prefer the STL Tonehub plugin overall for just like general guitar tones, and that's why I chose to use it on kind of the main riff of the demo that I did. But you should be aware of those few caveats before diving in and picking it up. So just one more time, let's listen to the tones. This is the Archon. All right, and the Abbasi. And finally, the STL Tones Tonehub. So they all sound great. They all serve different purposes. I think the Archon, I think Tonehub is better than the Waves Archon, but for $50, it's really, really hard to go wrong with the Archon plugin. Abasi is great in the circumstances it works in, but it, like Animals as leaders, as a band, it requires some kind of specific constraints to really sound its best. Just as kind of a bonus here, I'm going to jump into this bass DI because I'm actually using Tonehub on the bass DI. So I have a SVT Classic preset loaded up from the core pack, actually. The main tone is really coming from this Neural DSP Dark Glass plugin, though, which, if you guys are interested, I'd love to do a video on the future because this thing sounds amazing. So let me just kind of show you what that sounds like. Ignore my sloppy bass playing, but yeah, I think the STL Tones, just to showcase, it doesn't just work on guitar, it works on bass as well. And with that, we have all 3 plugins. The links to them are in the video description below, so if you're interested in picking up any of them, just go down there and pick them up. I don't have any relationships with any of these plugin manufacturers. I bought all 3 of these plugins myself, so going to them is just simply supporting them because you like the sound, not because it was advertised to you or anything like that. As always, if you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And let me know in the comments if you want to see any other demos for particular amp sims, whether it's guitar, bass. I know I mentioned the Dark Glass thing. I would love to do a demo of that in the future. So let me know what you guys are interested in the comments below. Until next time.